shootings at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut. If you don't know about this, you are going to be stunned. It's not just some internet extremists alleging these conspiracies. This is a guy named James Tracy, a tenured associate professor at Florida Atlantic University, a public school that's taxpayer funded. What he wrote originally on his personal blog, and I quote, "One is left to inquire whether the Sandy Hook shooting ever took place, at least in the way law enforcement authorities and the nation's news media have described." Now, as we told you Friday, normally we wouldn't dignify these types of remarks by covering them, but James Tracy is a tenured professor at a public university. We invited Professor Tracy to come on the program Friday night. He declined. He gave us a statement, though, saying, quote, "I apologize for any additional anguish and grief my remarks and how they have been taken out of context and misrepresented may have caused the families who've lost loved ones on December 14th. At the same time, I believe the most profound memorial we can give the children and educators who lost their lives on that day is to identify and interrogate the specific causes of their tragic and untimely demise. Like all reporters, I believe in free speech, and Professor Tracy has the right to say whatever he wants. But as a teacher at a public university, we think he should be accountable for the things he says and being willing to defend them." So about that, Tracy makes the case, if you want to call it a case, that news organizations and the government may have worked together to dupe you, the public, in order to gain support for gun control laws. At the very least, Tracy thinks the reporters botched the story by not digging deep enough, not investigating what really happened in Newtown. On his blog, he points to early reports that other suspects were arrested after the shooting, suggesting that perhaps there was more than one gunman. Now, this is a major point many of the conspiracy theorists argue. They say the reporters never followed up on who was arrested. That is not true. One of these conspiracy videos has gotten millions of hits on YouTube, and a lot of the claims are based on initial reporting, which, as we all know, is often inaccurate. But instead of seeing it as the fog of war or just incorrect reporting early on.
Final warning. Stand by, comrades, for the 2 minutes hate. This is the face of our enemy. Look at him, the Eurasian butcher, the reveler in atrocities, the world criminal. This is the enemy our brave soldiers fight in the jungles and the deserts of the polar snows. This is the enemy against whom our brave sailors man the floating fortresses. This is the enemy we can see, but worse than he is the enemy within, the enemy of the people, Emmanuel Goldstein, traitor to the party, arch conspirator, leader of the accursed brotherhood, director of spies and saboteurs. This is he. For Goldstein, we can feel only one thing.
The other thing, I mean, Alex, that is so I find idiotic about a lot of these conspiracy theories is, you know, nothing remains secret for very long. So it's not as if the government can't keep, you know, things that are actually classified information secret from very long. There's so many people who leak stuff. So the idea that somehow, like, the news media is in cahoots with the government, and you divide conspiracy theorists into kind of two camps, cranks and firebrands. What's the difference?
Well, the firebrands tend to be the young folk. I mean, the ones that you see, sometimes 9/11 on the anniversary, you'll see these people marching, the so-called 9/11 truth movement. They tend to be young people. You often see them on university campuses. Cranks tend to be older types, people in their 40s and 50s. Often they're college professors. Often they're computer scientists. Often it's people with a very technical frame of mind who are drawn to these very intricate conspiracy theories.
It's just unbelievable to me. Jonathan Kay, I appreciate it, and Alex Seitz-Waltz, thank you very much. Actually, joining us right now, just called in, is Erica Lafferty, who's the daughter of Dawn Huxspring, the Sandy Hook.
Police state news.
One thing that's becoming somewhat of a concern, and that is misinformation that's being posted on social media sites. It is important to note that we have discussed with federal authorities that these issues are crimes. They will be investigated statewide and federally, and prosecution will take place when people perpetrating this information are identified. Again, all information relative to this case is coming from these microphones, and any information coming from other sources.
For questioning official narrative of shooting, and this is from Paul Joseph Watson. This came out today. Facebook is suspending user accounts that question the official narrative behind the Sandy Hook school massacre following a warning by Connecticut State Police spokesman J. Paul Vance. Second, Connecticut school shooter suspect in custody. CBS News reports that a potential second shooter is in custody and that SWAT is now investigating the home of the suspect. Okay, we haven't heard word of this person. So Lieutenant John Paul Vance, or JP Vance, whatever your name is, we have questions. Who was this guy? Who has such magical powers that they could be arrested by police on the scene of one of the worst mass shootings in history, and we never hear a peep of him? How is that possible? I want to know. Let's go to the video.
It's believed at this hour, and it's been confirmed to ABC News by state police there in Connecticut, that 2 shooters were initially believed involved in the mass shooting. One of those shooters now dead. What's not been confirmed is whether or not that gunman took his own life or whether or not there was something that ensued after authorities began arriving at the scene.
So we ran out. There's police about at every door. They're leading us down this way, quick, come on. Then we ran down to the firehouse. There's a man pinned down to the ground with handcuffs on, and we thought that was the victim. We really didn't get a good glance at him because he was, like, there's a car blocking it.
They did walk a guy out of the woods. I saw him walk a guy out earlier with handcuffs. He walked by us and said he didn't do it.
It was a grown man.
A grown man, yeah. He's sitting in the front of the police car over there now. So, I mean...
He didn't have a gun?
No, I didn't see any gun. Just had him handcuffed. And he walked by us and looked into parents' eyes and said, I didn't do it.
How was he dressed?
Camo pants with a dark jacket.
Press road. Other units take up station point in that driveway.
The system based completely on bribery. Now, if we do bribery, it's hypocrisy. If we do bribery in the private sector, we go to jail. Yet their entire political system is based upon bribery. Who can bribe and give the most money to the politician? And now, thanks to our illustrious Supreme Court that ruled that corporations have the same rights as individuals and that money is free speech, well, we're now being inundated with so much money from the corporations buying the Democrats and Republicans, both sides, that look at this hypothetically. A foreign country could now control our elections because all they would have to do is form a corporation, start pumping money into the super PACs, plus there's no, they don't have to say where the money comes from, which is criminal. Every candidate should have to state openly, open disclosure, where they get every dollar. You're not getting that now. So the whole system is corrupted now. The Democrats and Republicans are at fault because they've been in charge for 150 years. They can't pass the buck on it. And until they clean up the system, that's what you got. It's bribery.
Jesse, I'm shocked. I just agree with every word you just said.
No, you just want to get the crowd back on your side.
Not at all. As I said to you, I agree.
I'm teasing.
I agreed with every word. Why is it that Americans, to me it seems, so many Americans cannot divorce their right to defend themselves with a gun to the apparent right to go and buy 6,000 rounds of ammunition, high-powered assault weapons, and go and murder Americans?
Well, the best thing I can tell you, Piers, is this. Mexico has strict gun control. You cannot own a gun in Mexico, and they had 20,000 people dead last year in the drug cartel wars.
But Mexico has a very particular problem involving drugs. I can cite to you Britain, average... Well, let me just throw it back at you. In Britain, for example, an average of 35 people a year are murdered with guns. In Germany, it's about 40 to 50. France, the same. Spain, the same. Italy, there's a pattern here. America, 11 to 12,000 a year.
Yeah.
This country has more guns than anybody else and more gun murders.
Yeah.
It's inarguable, isn't it?
No, not at all.
It is.
Because I was in the Philippines physically the day Ferdinand Marcos declared martial law and made himself a dictator. And the first thing that dictator did, he gave the people of the Philippines 2 weeks to turn in all their guns or it was the death penalty. Now, why would a dictator do that? Why would he make his #1 priority when he took over as dictator to disarm the public? The Second Amendment is there, and it was put in there not for hunting and fishing like they like to say, because back when they did it, if you didn't hunt or fish, you didn't eat. It was put in there so the citizens would have the ability, if their government became oppressive, they could defend themselves against oppressive government. People kill people. All right, how many people here die because of car accidents of drunk driving? Do we go to the Ford Motor Company and tell them stop making these automobiles because people get drunk and kill people in cars?
It's a facile argument.
It's a what?
It's a facile argument. There's no equivalence between drunk driving and lethal firearms. My point is...
Wait a minute. A car is a 2,000-pound projectile that can go 100 miles an hour.
I have no problem with an American believing that their right under the Constitution is that they can defend themselves, especially in their own home, if they're being attacked and they have a weapon.
It's also against government.
I have a big problem with a disturbed young man, as we saw in Colorado, being able to buy 6,000 rounds of ammunition and a high-powered assault weapon and go into a movie theater and blow away 70 Americans. I have a big problem with that.
Well,
and nobody else in America in high office seems to share that big problem.
Well, I'll tell you what, Piers. I have a conceal and carry license. Had I been in there, I would have taken this guy out before he could have killed that many people.
Well, I think that, again...
But because, let's remember, police can't stop crimes. Police show up after they're over. Remember that.
How would you mark them? How would you scale them? And what would you say to them?
What I'd do is I'd replace the buzzers with a machine gun and just take them all out and do the public a massive favour.
What do you make of Piers Morgan these days?
Well, I watch him occasionally. He's very different from me. I never gave opinions. Piers gives his opinions. The show is a lot about him as much as the guests. I used to make the guests the star of the show.
And while we're on the subject, new rule: crazy people who still think the government brought down the Twin Towers in a controlled explosion have to stop pretending that I'm the one who's being naive. How big a lunatic do you have to be to watch two giant airliners packed with jet fuel slam into buildings on live TV, ignite a massive inferno that burned for 2 hours, and then think, well, if you believe that was the cause? Stop asking me to raise this ridiculous topic on the show and start asking your doctor if Paxil is right for you.